Media Essential Workers, thank you for joining us. I'm on today with Jeremy Ross, CBS 2's Jeremy Ross, along with Darrin Pierce, who's living in the bubble. He's actually joining us from that infamous bubble that we've all heard about. And I want to talk about why we are doing this. If you've been watching the show for the past week, we are trying to showcase the lives of people who had their world turned upside down. Isn't that right, in a way, Darrin? Overnight, sports production personnel, along with live events people, were some of the first who were financially and economically harmed by the pandemic when everything kind of shut down. Your world changed. There was a lot of uncertainty. And now you're in a position where some of you guys are working, but in very different situation than you've ever worked in before. So we're going to get into that. And again, I've usually conducted these interviews, but the story is so important to discuss what you guys are dealing with that I brought in my good friend, Jeremy Ross, who is with CBS 2 and a professional reporter. So he's going to get the story that I don't get. We have a little bit of that competitive energy, so we're going to play off each other a little bit. But Darrin, introduce yourself. Who are you? What brings you with us from the bubble?
Well, I'm Darrin Pierce. I'm a camera operator for Turner Sports. I've been doing sports television for 38 years, and I also had a career in aerospace for 31 years. So I've kind of juggled between the two, and I'm just very fortunate to be able to be part of this what I call a social experiment at the NBA bubble.
And Darrin, you had made mention, actually, as Raza had mentioned, you're joining us from Orlando, and some of the descriptions that we've heard about where you're talking to us from, somewhere in between resort and prison compound. Can you kind of elaborate on sort of the setting that you're currently in?
Yeah, well, what's kind of coincidental is I had actually been to this resort twice before and didn't realize it until I came here for the bubble. I was here as part of Raytheon when I worked for them as the manager of the communication department. And I was also here during a thing I did for the World Series of softball, which was something put together by Sports Illustrated. They housed us here. So when I checked in back in July 13th, I thought I've been here before, so I recognize this place. But it's a wonderful facility, beautiful grounds. There's 4 or 5 pools to use. There's a beautiful lagoon, but the only negative thing I could say about it is when you've been here for 2.5 months and you can't go outside and explore the theme parks and all the activities outside of the resort, it can get a little trying.
And you're currently on Disney property, by the way. Yeah. And you made mention that not a lot of places you can go because of the restrictions that they've put you under. You can't just venture off to Space Mountain and then head to work. Give us an idea of sort of where you can go, where you can't go. And also there is a color coding system that you have to adhere to. Can you kind of explain what that's about?
Yeah, well, the color coding system it's red. It's like a stoplight. It's red, green, yellow. And the most restrictive area is the green zone, which seems backwards to me. When I heard I was in the green, I thought I was in the most, the freest zone. But the green zone is the most restrictive. The green zone is where the players are, the coaches are, anybody who needs to be on the floor next to the players. That's what the green zone is. Yellow zone is those who are above the upper cameras that don't need to be on the floor, the announcers, anybody else who needs to be inside the arena but does not need to be down with the players. And then the red zone are those who don't need to come into the bubble, into the arenas or the site at all. Those who stay in the television truck. Now I'm sure there's other people that stay out in the red zone that aren't involved with television, but from my perspective, I just kind of tie it all into the TV folks.
Darrin, I'm going to take a step back. So when this pandemic first started, we talked about how production sports personnel were some of the first who were kind of put out of work. The way I've heard it from Cindy, who we talked to at the Wubble, you guys as sports personnel have maybe 5 months of bookings that, okay, this is what's going on. This is what I have. You have kind of a plan. You have an agenda. Now overnight, everything kind of changed. There's a saying, well, we always have sports in your industry. And then all of a sudden there wasn't. Tell us what that uncertainty was like. Tell us what the discussion was amongst your peers and what you felt.
Well, from my position, I was extremely lucky A lot of people who work for other different networks or different sports production companies, for instance, like Sinclair or places like that. I mean, with Turner, once the season ended or was suspended on March 12th for the March 13th game, which I was supposed to do in Los Angeles, they agreed to pay us throughout the rest of the season, even including the playoffs. I was scheduled to work the playoffs with them as well. Now, when they agreed to do that to us, they said if the season was to be reignited, to restart like we're having here, give us the right of first refusal. And once this bubble situation started, I spoke over with my wife. I said, I have to do this. I mean, these people were so good to us. I'm going to go and I have to go to Orlando to do this. So in my situation, I was pretty much taken care of, even though the season was canceled. Now, a lot of my colleagues, they did not get that same benefit. They, their games were canceled. Boom, they were done. Now, I had some football. I had some baseball games scheduled with Fox. I had a few other things scheduled with a couple other clients, and they paid me for those as well. But there's a lot of people in my position. Once everything was stopped, their income stopped as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people who might be watching this who aren't part of the business need to know that when you work in sports in the capacity that you're in, you're a freelancer. If you're working, you get paid. If you're not working, there's no money coming in. And obviously, COVID-19 just destroyed that for so many people out there.
Right. Yeah. But not only did it destroy it for us, the television folks, but think of all the stadium workers whose jobs went away. Think of all the restaurants nearby. I'm a restaurant owner myself. Luckily, mine isn't near a sporting venue, but there's so much that depends on sports in our country. And once that all stopped, yeah, we were directly affected immediately. But there's so many support groups around that whose income vanished. They didn't have it. There was no security blanket for them.
And for those folks who might be checking in who are not familiar with some of the language you're talking about, when we talk about the NBA bubble, we are talking about this relatively isolated area on Disney property that the NBA has set up in a so-called bubble with all these restrictions and all these protocols to hopefully play games that don't contaminate things with COVID-19. Can you talk to us about the various layers, including when you wake up in the morning, what you have to do to make sure that you are not COVID positive?
Well, here's one thing I want to say about the NBA when it comes to this. They really did their work prior to opening up this bubble. They had all these protocols in place. And as we move forward during the time in here, there's been changes made. For instance, I take my temperature every morning with this little guy right here. And originally, I would take it and I would manually input it into my phone, which was then transmitted to my to this. So that anywhere I went and checked in, I could see that I had done my NBA app, and also I had done my COVID test. I also use this for our oxygenation test to make sure that that we have enough oxygen in our blood. So these are the two things I do every morning. And originally we manually input that into our phone. Then they realized, people might not be completely honest. So then they made it a Bluetooth effort. So now it automatically is fed into the database. And then it goes to wherever it goes to the central database. Then it comes back and ends up on my wristband. So I do that every morning. You ask if we have a cough, sore throat, fever, a whole bunch of stuff. Then you ask if you've been in contact with anybody who's had COVID, and obviously we say no because as far as we know, we don't. However, on our badges, I can't show you my badge, but I can show you my proximity sensor. There's a proximity sensor that we carry around with us everywhere we go. And not only are these sensors in our credentials, they are everywhere around the facility. If I walk into the dining center, there's a couple of them on the walls. If I go over the wide world of sports, where we do the game. They're all over the place. So basically what that's saying is if one of us comes down with COVID or someone that we've been in contact with, that proximity sensor, they all talk to one another and say, okay, you need to go get tested again. You need to get quarantined, whatever. So they all basically, it's contact tracing. So it's very, very, very thorough. We get tested for COVID every single day. I make sure that after I do my NBA app, which is all my health stuff, then I go do my testing. So I make sure I don't forget, because some guys kind of forgot to get their testing because it becomes so routine that they eventually forget to get their testing done. But what we feel is very fortunate for us is we are tested and contact traced every single day. And that's unlike outside of this bubble.
Darrin, you walked in from the outside world into this. Tell us what it is that you walked into. Explain what we're looking at.
Well, I think that looks like the Wide World of Sports complex. And where that is that's where the 3 arenas are that hosted the restart of the NBA. So when we first started, we had 22 teams. 8 teams were not invited because they really weren't able to be eligible for the playoffs. So we had eight regular season games for the restart, and then we started the playoffs. Eventually, once the restart started and the regular season was over with, we kind of closed one of the arenas, and then we just stayed with 2 of the arenas until the finals, the conference finals started. And then once the conference finals started, we're down to 1 arena. But that's the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex, which hosted the MLS bubble when they had a tournament simultaneously with us early on. I'm forgetting. I'm going to say July, late July, early August. But they were having that at this location as well.
The COVID test, by the way, that you received, were they the swabs in the mouth, or did you get that up your nose and in the back of your brain?
No, the COVID test that we have, we were very concerned about that. We were thinking, because my son is a doctor in Phoenix, and he was having to have to perform those tests. And when he found out that we were coming down here, he said, "You got to do that every day?" But luckily, no. Luckily, it's a mouth swab, very simple mouth swab, and then a gentle swab of both your nostrils. Although sometimes the technician is a little bit more aggressive with the nostril swab, but more or less, it's actually pretty painless.
Did you or other photographers, especially with some of the contact tracing technology you're talking about, where essentially they can track where you're going, were there any privacy concerns, any thoughts about, no one needs to know how long I spent in the bathroom, guys?
Actually, no, because we had, we knew that we were extremely fortunate to be part of this event. And even though we may not have agreed with some of the protocol that they asked from us, we knew that at that time, 95% of our colleagues weren't working. So whatever the NBA asked us to do, we had the choice. If we didn't want to do it, we could go home. But none of us made that choice. We said, we are really, really lucky to be able to do this. We are so lucky because this has never been done before, and the experience itself is unique. But the fact that we have been chosen or selected to participate, I don't care if anyone knew that I was in the bathroom for 3 minutes longer than I normally was. I could care less. Maybe I was washing my hands longer kind of thing. So no big deal.
So protocols were pretty stringent when you went in there. Initially, you guys weren't allowed on the golf course. Things were restricted. These have eased a little bit. Talk about how that started and the psychological thing. I know you were fortunate to come and start working, but again, it was pretty restrictive when you weren't working. Walk us through how mentally this was.
Yeah, it became, I want to preface this with to let everyone know I don't want to come across as being unappreciative. Because, seriously, this is like a luxury vacation. Our meals are provided at zero cost. Our laundry is done every week at zero. I have not spent a dime since I have entered the bubble.
Huh.
I mean, everything is provided. Now, what it was difficult though, after week after week after week of the same thing, what had happened is there had been some folks who decided to, veer away from what the protocol is supposed to have been. There were some who were maybe drinking a little bit too much alcohol at the pool. There were some that might have been not social distancing when they were supposed to. So as there was some, we had a fitness center that we could go to that all of a sudden had a 4-person maximum. So what had happened as we moved forward and the number and the teams left, the restrictions upon us, the staff, not the referees nor the players or teams, got a little tighter. And as a result of that, we started feeling a little squeezed. The fact that, for me, when I used to manage my team at Raytheon, the longer my employees were with me, the greater amount of liberties they had, because they proved to me that they were sustainable employees that you want to keep around. Well, that was kind of different for us. It went the other way because a couple of people who decided not to follow the protocol. Anyway, we ended up closing some of the restaurants that we had access to. They ended up moving the amount of recreational tools like bicycles and fishing poles. They moved those to a different location, and those numbers were reduced. So basically, we were kind of getting squeezed, and as a result, the morale deteriorated with a lot of it, me included. For the first time in my life, I was living each day just to get it over with. I've never lived like that, right? So we ended up having a Zoom call with the NBA security, and on the call was one of the psychologists who is on our NBA app. We have the NBA app I was telling you about, where we do our temperature, in our tests, our oxygenation tests. There's also a question: do you want to speak with a mental health professional? And originally, when we first started this, it was like, what kind of question is that? Who needs that? We're on vacation here. As we went further down, I finally said one day, I'm going to call this dude, because I never felt like, let me just get this day over with, right? So anyway, we had a Zoom call, and I asked them, I said, is there any correlation between the fact that our liberties have been reduced, the alcohol consumption has increased by the pool, and has the number of calls been increased towards the mental health professional? And those three things pretty much tied together. The response to me was, we're going to look into this. We'll get back to you about that. The very next day, boom, the restaurants were open. We had access to go golfing. And we also had a dinner that was provided for us at one of the restaurants that had opened. So they kind of realized, I'm hoping this was a result of our voicing the fact that we're kind of feeling a little squeezed, because if the players are getting squeezed, and there's been lots of articles about that. LeBron James decided to go to the golf course just to drive his cart around, even though he doesn't golf, because he needed to get out of this bubble. And Paul George, I know, because I met Paul George the first couple of weeks I was here when I was out there fishing with him, and he had mentioned that it's tough mentally to be in here. And he'd only been here for like 3 weeks. And then we did an interview with him after one of his games where he performed it was his best game. And he even expressed, he said, I was in a dark place. I was dark. It's hard to be in here. And regardless of how much money you make or whatever you do, when you're isolated, it's tough. So.
And you had mentioned, that you're a father of 2, you have a wife, and you're separated from them. And I imagine that conversations with other staff members, were they feeling the same way as you? And if so, about how many people like you, or at least, having those feelings of, I'm feeling boxed in, we're feeling the same thing.
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, some people love this environment, and some people like it for the paycheck, because they're getting the paycheck and they can deal with that. There's several guys I work with who are going through a lot of stuff outside of work, and they know that they're here for a job, but they know that they also are missing stuff that they should normally be dealing with. So The fact that we are guaranteed to be paid through the end of the playoffs anyway. There's some of us want a really good series. Let's go 7 and make it great. And others, including myself, are like, Lakers, could you please have swept the series? And they didn't do it. So there's, I don't want to say I'm speaking for everybody, because I would never ever want to do that. But there are those who are doing great with this. But then there are others who just, I mean, the bad thing about me is, and some of the guys I work with, once we leave here, we get to go home for a few days, but then we have to go to San Diego for another bubble, for the Major League Baseball bubble. Now, when we go to Major League Baseball bubble, I will probably be in something more like the yellow zone here, so it won't be as restrictive. But still, we'll still have no contact with people outside of here.
I do want to take a moment to actually, because Andy brings about a good point to talk about, and we brought this up before. There's a lot of people in live events, a live events coalition, who are still looking to get back into work, as we discussed earlier. Live events, as well as sports, were some of the first that were financially affected by this pandemic. And with a lot of live events, they'll probably be some of the last to reopen. So I do want to point out what Andy is saying, that a lot of people in live events are still hurting. And I do want to give some ways that they can support that. There have been a lot of Red Alert events that and join things like the Live Events Coalition, and keep track on the legislative kind of initiatives that people are fighting for, to make sure these guys are taken care of, because again, they want to get back to work. Nobody likes sitting back and waiting in this uncertainty, in this environment, to know what's going to happen. I mean, there's a mental piece, I'm sure, Darrin, that you can tell us about getting that call, and hey, you're going to be in a bubble, but you're going to be working. You're going to have that purpose where you're going to be doing what you love doing.
And of course, by the way, stay safe and don't die.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I know Andy. I mean, Andy does live events and that kind of thing. And in that group, I mean, there's no concerts. I have an old friend of mine who does concerts all the time. And she's not doing any of those kind of things. She's not doing, none of those people are working. And it's very, very difficult to, I mean, sometimes we feel guilty that we've been here for 2.5 months working regularly. So sometimes you have that you're kind of fighting with that, every once in a while. But the fact that when we came into this bubble, I was never fearful of being sick. I didn't feel that. In fact, I'm more concerned about leaving the bubble now, because I'm wondering, is my immune system deteriorated? Because I'm telling you, everything is wiped down. I go in to get my COVID test. I sit in the chair. They wipe up my chair. I mean, everything is so spick and span. I don't know if you can see it during the games. You probably can't, because the game camera goes with the ball. But every time that ball goes to the other end of the court, there's 3 guys that get out on the court and wipe the key, where guys might have been sweating. And then they get off the court before the ball comes back the other way. I mean, I've never seen such cleanliness. And so I'm thinking, well, what's my immune system like when I leave here? Am I going to be able to survive a summer cold? Am I concerned about it? No. I take care of myself. I exercise. I try to do everything I can to keep myself in decent shape and condition. But then, you just don't know. But I don't want to live in fear anyway, either. I mean, I'll do what I need to do. I'll wear my face mask. I'll do whatever it has been recognized to try to stop this or prevent it. But I don't feel like I'm gonna. I was never in doubt that I was safe while I was here.
You've started documenting your experience. You've started kind of sharing with the world about what the life is like in the bubble. One of the jokes I heard was, I hope there's a lot of pictures, because people want to glean this. They want to see what's going on. And you've provided, like you've had very little contact with people initially, but then you were able to get back into restaurants. You were able to do things like this. What is this?
Yeah, that is... that's a friend of mine, Dennis Shannon, took a picture. He worked with us on getting our pictures while we were out there. That's our wiffle ball group, We made up our own sport to play because there were so limited things to do. So we would take towels from the pool area and make bases. And that was a bunch of us that played wiffle ball. And he took that picture, and we named the park that we play at. We called it COVID Field at Pandemic Park, sponsored by hydroxychloroquine, whatever that name of that drug is that you're supposed to know. Anyway, so that's what we called that field every day when we would play wiffle ball. And that was something that we just came up on our own because we were finding things to do. And then and Dennis, before he left to go, Dennis left us about 10 days ago, and he's great with Photoshop and that kind of stuff. So he put together that picture for us.
Well, that's fantastic.
That's right. With in terms of the routine, is it like Groundhog's Day though? Basically, you wake up, do the same thing, maybe bump into Ned Ryerson on the way to the game.
Yeah, it is very much like Groundhog Day, especially now. And what I say now is because when we had 22 teams here, sometimes we'd go in and do 2 games a day, and then the next day we do one game. Then the next day we do 2. You had a whole bunch of games. Now with only 4 teams left, and you're only working every other day, and you only have so much that you can do, it's very much so. And so, I mean, coming into this, into the bubble, I decided I was going to learn how to speak Spanish better. So I'd take a Spanish class every day on my computer, and I wanted to document everything that happened. Not everything, but try to at least put a few notes down. So if I ever wanted to go back and try to expand upon the things that happened, I'd be able to do that. But after I do my Spanish test, and after I write my synopsis of the day, I'm like, okay, I can go to the gym again. But it got to the point where you were actually doing the same thing every day. And again, I don't want to fault those who really like that type of a lifestyle, but it's very difficult for me.
What's this?
Yeah, this was one of the days right before a lot of the referees left, a lot of the other support people left. We had by the pool, we had blackjack table set up. There was a domino tournament going on. There was music playing. There was some of the referees had the greatest playlist. They were blaring from their speakers. We had a pickleball going on in the parking lot along with the softball. But a guy had set up a blackjack table and a $20 buy-in, and you would just play some. I guess it's illegal, but we did it, and just play blackjack just to pass the time. It was really, really fun. But as you can see, look at that picture. People are kind of spread out. Now, does he have a mask on? If he didn't, I don't know if he has a mask on or not, but if he didn't, then I had the mask on because I took the picture. Because the NBA security personnel, they were always walking around. They were making sure that even though we had been in here for 2 months and never had a positive test, the protocol was in place, and they wanted us to make sure that we were adhering to that.
We make the assumption that gentleman didn't have the mask on because he was drinking. So,
I never want to speak for someone else because that gets you. But if we were far enough apart, then it's okay. It was okay at that time. Remember, that could have been a zoom lens. I could have been really close to him.
If you're just joining us, I want to give you an idea of what we're doing. We're talking with Darrin Pierce, who's living in the bubble, covering NBA games. He's been there, and I'm joined by Jeremy Ross, CBS 2 reporter. I am Raza Siddiqui. We've been kind of doing a series profiling what our people in the sports world have had to deal with, along with our friends in live events who have first financially suffered some hardship, along with people in news. The world is starting to pick up for people in sports, and we kind of want to shadow and profile what's going on. So again, that's why we brought Darrin on. Darrin, tell us a little about what made you decide that you wanted to start chronicling, because we have your blog up here so people can see it, but the day-to-day life in the bubble.
Well, before I left, I told my wife, I said, this has never been done before. I said, so I think I'm going to try to just document it, and just so I can relive it, or just have some kind of representation of what it was. And then perhaps maybe in the future, maybe see if there's a market for it to be published, just to share some experiences that I've had. I mean, I read the book from Katie Tur, who was she was her first, not her first job, but she was hired to do the Donald Trump presidential run. She was the MSNBC reporter. I really liked the way she wrote that book. So I figured I'm gonna see if I can try to, put some notes together like that, just to kind of document, because this had never ever been done before. So I started writing these things down. And it wasn't just my experience. It was stuff that I observed from other people and then got their perspective of certain things. And then in the middle of writing all this stuff down, I had shared some of that with a colleague of mine. And he says, "Hey, you should put this down as a blog." So basically, I actually kind of launched the blog maybe a week or two ago, but I've loaded it up from the very first day, from actually the day before I left home, leading up to everything that has happened. So I try to document, the things that I have gone through, and the things that some of my other friends have gone through since we've been in here, some of the things that I've observed. And to me, it's kind of entertaining. I've shared it with some of the guys I work with, and they kind of liked it because they like, "Oh my God, I forgot that we did this. Oh yeah, I remember doing this kind of thing." So, and then as the blog goes on, I was so afraid of it being redundant. I was so afraid of it being Groundhog Day. Okay, what do you do every day, right? Well, each day, I find certain weird things out there. I really found out how unique it was the way they mowed the lagoon every week. They have a machine out there that mows the plants underwater. I've never seen that before. The lizards that are all over the place, the wildlife that's all over the place. The more I'm here, the more I'm aware of my surroundings and things that happen, along with the regular basketball stuff and television stuff as well. So I just try to capture that, as best as I could.
So those of you, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, for those of you who might just be tuning in, Darrin basically is spending time on a Disney property in a resort area, and it is somewhere in between resort and weird prison compound because it's very restricted on where he can go, where he can't go, and no, he cannot go to Space Mountain and head to work. But that's kind of his surroundings and his environment. Darrin, one of the questions I had for you is from someone who, pre-pandemic was used to traditional sports shooting. Is there anything that you're doing technically now, whether we're talking about shooting a game or an interview, maybe a sideline correspondent, interviewing LeBron James, for instance, that might be done technically different because of social distancing, because of COVID-19 restrictions? Anything you're doing differently?
Yeah, that's a great question, because technically we've made a lot of adjustments. They want to have as little contact with the players as possible. So we have a lot of robotic cameras set up, where normally we would have handheld cameras there to do that job. Now, it's great to be able to do that because you have time to set up all that equipment. Maybe if you go into a venue the same day, it would be very, very difficult to have all these robotic cameras set up on the same day. But we've been utilizing robotic cameras for arrivals, where normally the handheld camera would be there, or a RF camera that could feed the stuff back to the truck. We've had to do the interviews on the court differently. Normally, a couple of handheld cameras would be up there, right in the player's face, and the sideline reporter. Now we use a robotic camera and a slash camera off the sidelines. So there's a lot of different things that we're doing to make sure that social distancing is in place, and it's been very unique. We've learned a lot. I think that there's things that we've done that we might be able to use more in the future.
Darrin, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I got to ask about this. Josh asks, no mention of the rocket launch viewings. What's that all about? That sounds like something I want to know.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. That's another thing that we do here. Now, I've tied into the Kennedy Space Center rocket launch schedule because it's only 60 miles away to the east. And so what we've done is I want to say I've kind of taken charge to let everybody know when the next rocket launch is. And so we meet out there, we watch the rockets take off. Now, one night there was a Delta Heavy rocket that was supposed to launch, which was going to send up a spy satellite, and it was supposed to launch like at 2:00 in the morning. So there's like 9 of us out there. We're sitting there. We have some cocktails. We've got some popcorn away, and we can log in and watch the live webcast, so we know when it launches. So then when it launches, 10 seconds later, we can look over the horizon and see it taking off in the air. That's kind of the protocol. Well, there was a 4-minute hold, and it went off, and finally was held to like 3:29 in the morning. So we're all out there. Again, we've worked that night before, and we're hanging out there till 3:29 in the morning, and it's counting down, and we're watching it on our phones, and it goes 3, and once it hits 3, you can start seeing flames coming up from the bottom of the rocket on the webcast, but there's actually been a hold put on. So at T-3, they held it, and it never took off. And so we had set out there for such a long time. Although we've seen a lot of the SpaceX launchers, we witnessed those. But the good thing about the Lakers losing, was it last night? I've lost.
All blessed together. We'll give you a pass.
Yeah, is with that Delta rocket has been rescheduled to launch Friday night at midnight. Now, had the Lakers won and then they won again on Thursday, we would have missed that rocket launch. And now, the one that we had stayed up till 3:30 in the morning till has now been rescheduled till Friday night. So hopefully we can watch that thing take off.
I'm sure TNT is relieved that the rocket is accommodating you.
Hey, the fact that it's something different to do is great for us. It's something totally different to do. And me being from the aerospace industry originally, I kind of like that stuff. That's kind of cool to watch that stuff happen.
Darrin, there's been 2 things that have changed the landscape of what it is that you do in sports. One is the pandemic. Secondly is the fight for social justice. Now, I know a lot of times you've been doing sports productions, but you're in a bubble where local media can't get in, national network media can't get in. We were talking, like I said, to Cindy in the Wubble, who said every so often they've been forced to kind of become pool cameras for news outlets because it's the only dissemination to the outside world of perspectives. Have you found yourself doing that? And then second part of the question is going to be, have you had the opportunity to discuss these things with your coworkers? Because again, you are in that situation.
Yeah, as far as being pool cameras, during games, our cameras go everywhere. It used to just go back to the truck. Now our cameras, whatever we shoot goes wherever. So gotta be very, very selective what you shoot when you're on camera, because it's going out the world. But as far as pool cameras that's not the case here in this bubble, because there are news or certain crews that are allowed in the bubble in the green zone that are doing their own reporting. So as far as that might be a little different than the WNBA. But as far as the social justice and injustice and the talking about that, I had a wonderful opportunity that I would never have had before if this bubble hadn't existed. Is one night after our very last wiffle ball game, because the guys were leaving the next day, I was walking back to go get something to eat, and Richard Jefferson and Rebecca Harlow were sitting by the pool, and one of the other guys I knew from Houston. So I sat there and talked with them, and we got on the subject. Richard Jefferson got on. He gave it the most wonderful perspective of the Black Lives Matter, of the social injustice from black man's perspective, and he wasn't, he was not in favor of a lot of the radical stuff that might have taken place. He was not in favor of some of the things that maybe people had a bad perception of. But sitting there, I didn't even go to dinner. I sat there from 7:30 until midnight, missed dinner, and we had this incredible discussion that I would have had before. And Rebecca, on the other hand, she gave her own perspective of things that she's gone through, like with the Me Too movement, which was a big deal, the things that she's had to deal with going on through her career. So I felt fortunate the fact that because of this bubble, I was able to sit down with these people and hear this really incredible perspective that I would never have had that opportunity to hear before. And then when I got back to my room, I said, man, that would have been so good for someone else to hear, especially people who didn't like the Me Too movement, who didn't understand the BLM movement, any of that kind of stuff, who were not in favor of it or didn't understand it. It was a great opportunity to get a perspective, at least to understand. And
after the police shooting in Kenosha and the subsequent riots, if I remember correctly, the Milwaukee Bucks boycotted a game, and then other NBA teams did the same. Can you take us through sort of what it was like to be part of that particular moment as well?
Yeah, it was probably the strangest day I've ever had in TV sports. The Bucks were playing in the arena. That there's three arenas here that we play in. The arena, which is the main one, and then the Visa arena, they call it Visa Field House or Visa Athletic Center, and the HP Field House. So we were in the HP Field House getting ready to do Houston and OKC. Milwaukee was getting ready to do their game first, and then our game would follow once theirs was finished. So me and the guys I work with, we were in the dining center, watching, eating dinner and watching the screens. And the Milwaukee game was up there, but there was they had the other team warming up, and there was no Milwaukee team out there. And then this little thing came up on the bottom of the screen that, headline, alert, Milwaukee game may be postponed. And then our phones went off and said, guys, get back to your cameras in HP. So we ran back into HP, and we got on camera because some of the players from OKC and Houston were out there shooting, and then they were called off the court. And we're like, whoa, okay, what's going on? And then we had feeds from the robotic cameras that were out in the hallways in our arena. We already knew that Milwaukee had decided they weren't going to play. Okay. And then we had a beautiful shot of Russell Westbrook and Chris Paul getting together, having a conversation. We couldn't hear what they were saying, but we could see what they were saying. And the next thing we knew is we see the players walking to catch the bus. And we're like, okay, this game's canceled, that game's canceled. And so we stayed on camera and tried to give the reports that our reporters could give. Next time you know, baseball teams are stopping, hockey stopping, other teams are kind of, giving support by stopping. I think some WNBA teams did as well. So it was basically it was the weirdest time. It was weird when I flew to LA to do the game on March 13th to have it canceled, but we kind of knew. We kind of knew why that happened. This was it was totally unplanned, and it was very, very shocking for us and we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know if we were going to continue in this bubble. In fact, after we were released and we came back to the resort, that pool area was packed with referees, staff members, everybody speculating, are we going home tomorrow? What's going on? We thought our bubble had burst. We didn't know what was going on.
And of course, we have the decision today involving the shooting death of Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, where none of the officers were criminally charged directly with her killing. Are you hearing any murmurs, any rumors, any initial possibilities of more of that in the days to come? What are you hearing out there?
Well, see, I think that if we would have had more teams and more personnel here, we would have heard more things if something was going on. But today, like I said, ESPN is doing the game tonight, so their entire crew is gone. There's the number of people here on site is very, very small now. So so you don't have as many people around. So we haven't heard anything. But I think that decision came on, later on in the day. So I don't know what's happening with the game tonight. I really don't know. But I'm sure that there will be a lot of shoes that might have Breonna's picture on their shoes and that kind of stuff. So I can't speculate. But once my wife let me know what was going on, I was like, okay, this might not be a very positive result of that.
Darrin, there's been a lot of isolation, obviously, a lot of lack of human contact living in the bubble. And we were talking kind of offline before, and there was one thing that you were really looking forward to when you get out of this bubble before you go to your next assignment that I think really epitomizes, the experience you're going through. Tell us what it is that you are looking forward to most when you leave this bubble.
Yeah, this is really weird. I just want to touch my wife's face.
You know what? That is not weird at all. I'm actually going to say that that's one of the most humane things that I can hear given the circumstances. Because you know what? There's only so much Zoom can do.
Yeah. Well, one day, I don't know what day we were, I was messing around with our guys. We were playing dominoes by the pool. And I said, you guys realize we have not touched another human being for like 2 months? I mean, of course, the TV guys I work with, they kind of went to the negative side, making little jokes. And I said, no, seriously, you haven't shook hands? When people leave the bubble, you can't give them a hug, none of that. So, I said, so I'm not going to have a serious discussion with you guys ever again because you guys, they always want to go to the other side. But that's really the case. You don't really realize until you're in that position kind of how weird that stuff is.
No one wants to admit it, right? No one wants to admit it. But looking at their actions, I'm sure you see it. We were talking about personalizing their space. You have a pretty sterile environment in your hotel room, but people are having things shipped in. I mean, people are getting homesick, right? Tell us about some of that experience. Like they might not admit to you that they missed the human contact, but through their actions, what are you seeing in terms of bringing home your home?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, my wife has always told me, whenever I travel with her, when you get in your room, you put your clothes away, you put everything's tidy. So my room is extremely sterile, very sterile. In fact, one time the housekeeper came in, and as I got ready to leave, she goes, "Oh, your room always so clean."
She's like, "Can I tip you?"
I gotta keep it that way because I've been trained very, very well. However, there are some guys who've actually made their home for the last 2.5 months. They brought in lighting, they moved the beds differently, they put up posters, they've made it feel more like a home. They've done all that kind of stuff. One guy he put in some like ribbon lighting, so it's a nice purple hue inside of his room. He brought in lava lamp. He brought in all kinds of different things. One guy took his bed and pushed it against the wall to give him more space to work out inside of his room. So,
wait, was it your buddy brought in a lava lamp?
Yeah, there's some people who really. Yeah, I have no pictures of it though because I'm not going into other people's rooms.
But do you work with Austin Powers?
No, but I'll tell you, there are some people who have done a really good job of making their place their home, and so more power to them if they can do that. Yeah, it's unbelievable. You should see the shipping and receiving department here. That all the stuff is brought in at. It's incredible. It's the size of a gigantic conference room in the hotel. It's filled with goods.
As you were mentioning that when the team starts to leave and you get further into the playoffs, it sounds to me like you're having a little bit more contact with some of the NBA players that we may see in and around TV interviews and whatnot. Any particular stories that you can share with us about some of the players, maybe some that struck you as being really interesting, maybe funny? Any good stories?
Well, again, we're not encouraged to have contact with the players. And because of the fact that's what the protocol is, but observing, here's what I think is the weirdest thing. One of the weirdest things is normally when we do a game, we get there at 1:30 in the afternoon. The players arrive at 4 or whatever at a regular facility. But they all drive in with their nice high-end cars. They park them inside the arena. I mean, it's an experience to see what type of car they have and that kind of stuff. But it's so weird to be walking around the grounds and seeing Donovan Mitchell riding a beach cruiser that's way too small for him out to the restaurant in the middle of the lagoon, or seeing Michael Porter Jr. on a bicycle, or we had when we were out playing in wiffle ball one day, Kawhi Leonard was just doing donuts in the parking lot in a golf cart because it gave him something to do. And it was so strange to see that, when you come right down to it, if you're all kind of put on the same level playing field, everybody's pretty much the same way. It was just really kind of fun. And in fact, Nick Nurse used to pedal by every day. He'd be looking at us playing wiffle ball. And we try to call him, come on, we play, but he never did, even though I know he wanted to. I was afraid that there'd be something in the news that Nick Nurse can't coach because he turned his ankle playing wiffle ball with the TNT baseball television crew because
Cool.
they were doing that.
Kawhi Leonard, by the way, notorious for being a little bit aloof and not the best interview, at least on sports television. So hearing him, I guess, being somewhere in between Golf Channel and Too Fast, Too Furious makes me smile.
Yeah, it was. We were out there playing. We go, is that Leonard out there? That's what it is. I think Patrick Beverly was with them too. I think they were just out there, yeah. So it was just kind of weird to see, to see that kind of stuff.
I'm willing to bet Patrick Beverly goaded him into doing that. That's what I call though.
But Kawhi was behind the wheel though. He was the one behind the wheel. Yeah.
Okay.
Darrin, I'm going to ask you a little about interacting with family while in this bubble, because again, you're spending time away from your family, but you told me kind of a cute story about somebody whose daughter actually had a video project, and kind of tell us how that worked out, because he's trying to help her remotely, trying to do what a father does, but again, not in contact. What happened? Tell us.
Yeah, the one of our Turner tape operators, he's in the yellow zone, and he has a daughter in high school. And she was has one of the broadcasting classes in high school, and they have their own news show at the high school, just south of or just outside of Charlotte. And he contacted me to see if I could do a Zoom interview with her to get some content for her project. So I was more than happy, to do that. So but it was kind of like this right here, where she was on screen, he was on screen, and I was on screen, and they were just asking questions about what it's like, to be in this bubble. And so I tried to answer as many, the questions as honestly as possible. Then I provided her with a bunch of images that I had from in here that could try to back up, her story. Because I think it's really important, regardless of the avenue that one might go through, for people to understand what it's really like inside this, because a lot of people just see the games, and the games are a wonderful showcase. They're competitive. The NBA and the sound has done a great job with the sound effects and making each court look like a home court, and it feels like a real game. Initially, back in late July, it did not feel like a real game. It felt like it just felt really hollow and shallow. But now, when I'm on camera and I'm doing the game, I feel like I am in an arena with 15, 20,000 people, although I just can't see them. We have them virtually, but I just can't see them. But anytime I had an opportunity to try to share this with people, to have them understand that it's more than just, a basketball game that's going on, so they can kind of see what it's really like doing what we're doing. Because this is once in a lifetime. This has never been done before.
Darrin, you mentioned that this is kind of like a first of its kind social sports experiment. And you've talked about how the NBA has really done a great job overall in that experiment. Are there maybe one or two things that might be either failures or things that you think that they could do better maybe the next time around?
Well, I think that if something like this, and I'm praying this never happen again, but if you were to do this again, what the fault that I think that affects us is, had we knew better what we're getting ourselves into. Had we known, okay, when you get there, this is what's going to happen, and these are the things that are available to you. So how can you prepare yourselves better to be able to conform to being in here? And I think that's that would put a lot of responsibility upon people like me. Okay, I know I'm getting this. I know I'm getting this. I know I'm getting that. Okay, what can I bring? What can I provide to make my experience a little bit better? Because when you first got here, it was utopia. Food was delivered to your room. Everything. But then as it went on, you realize there are some things that that are lacking. The other thing I think that they need to understand is that the longer that you're here, that class structure. Sometimes I try to compare this to the ship Titanic. That the staff of us, at some point, we felt we were in steerage in Titanic. But then after communicating and talking about things and working, and listening to one another, we don't feel that way anymore. So I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned, but I cannot in one second fault the NBA on what they have done. Nor can I fault Turner. Turner has been extremely kind to us, but because this has never been done before, so it's a learning experience. And I think the most of us that are here realize that we're gonna learn as we go. And as long as you can understand that, it shouldn't be that bad of an experience.
Please do not go down with the ship, by the way.
What's this, Darrin? What am I looking at here?
This is I do not know whose room this is, but on the way to COVID Field at Pandemic Park where we play our games, this individual has put in inspirational notes every day that he's been in his room or she's been in her room. I don't even know who's in the room. I kind of hung out there for a while to kind of see who might be there so I can ask them about it. But it's basically inspirational notes that the person puts out there every morning when they wake up. And now that picture was probably taken 3 or 4 weeks ago. Right now that door is filled. It's a gigantic filled in heart. And it's just inspirational things for people to read. It was it's a great idea. I thought it was pretty clever. I still don't know who lives in that room. I don't want to be like a stalker and hang out there and find out who it is. But whoever it is, it's very, very clever.
Darrin, as we start to wrap things up, I just wanted to ask you, you're going from this bubble, the next step is another bubble.
Yeah. And that's why I want those dang Lakers to win this thing quickly so I can go home for a while. TNT Turner does basketball, and then TBS, which is still part of Turner, does the baseball playoffs. So we have the American League divisional and ALCS championship series. So we have both of those in San Diego. I think LA and San Diego they're both doing the divisional series, but then the championship series is in San Diego. So I'll be in San Diego for those two playoffs. And I'm pretty sure the way it's set up now, they've moved cameras to different positions, so there'll be a lot fewer cameras down with the players. So I think when we get to San Diego, we'll be pretty much like in the yellow zone is here. But I'm not sure yet. In fact, we don't even know. I'm not even sure which hotel we're at yet. So I can't really give you a clean answer.
And Ross and I look very much forward to seeing the Cubs and the White Sox there, so we hope you enjoy that too.
Well, the Cubs, like I said, we got the American League, so I don't know who who's going to be there for the American League.
I do plan on roping Jeremy for a part 2 to talk about what's going on in the bubble at that point as well. If you're just joining us, I think you got a good taste of what we do here at Media Central Workers is we chronicle the stories of the storytellers, talk about the experiences that our guys are going through kind of with this unprecedented event. I really want to thank both my guest, Darrin, and also Jeremy Ross from CBS, who really helped keep this flowing. Jeremy, I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk a little about what your takeaways are. And then, Jeremy, we're going to leave you with a final thought. We really enjoyed having you. We're going to encourage people to go check out your blog, which is giving a day-to-day experience of this bubble. So, Jeremy, what's your takeaway? Darrin, let's conclude it.
Life on the road sounds tough, especially when you have the isolation there. But it sounds to me like so many media essential workers that you're doing the best you can in the circumstances that you're given. And we certainly hope that you continue doing your best work. And of course, just making sure that you stay well and you stay healthy.
Yeah. And again, I can't express how fortunate that I am in the folks that are here, to do this, because it's a pretty select group of people that were chosen to do this. So we definitely feel extremely, extremely fortunate. But we do miss our families. We do miss our regular life. But we realize that this is just a bump in the road. This is that phrase "new normal." And don't ever use that phrase. There is no such thing as a new normal. This is a bump in the road. This is something that's going to pass, and we're going to get back to to normality. At least that's my perspective. Is that we'll get back to normality. But I guess the last thing I want to leave with is listen to other people who have a different perspective than you.
Well, I love it. Let's keep it there. We want to thank you for sharing your perspective, giving us a taste of what it's like in the bubble. I want to thank you both for joining us. And as always, thank you guys for listening and getting a taste of what it is. I'm going to leave it on this note. There's not a lot I can add, but I do want to add support those who are in live events coalition. Let's get everyone back to work safely. But you know, people are hurting and we want to always be thinking about them and remembering their stories too. We'll be talking to some of them in the near future as well. Thank you both for joining us, and thank you all for joining us as well. I'm Razif.